The public torture lynching was invented at the turn of the 20th century. It didn't exist, by the way, prior to the 1890s. These burnings and dismemberments in front of large crowds are a late 19th, early 20th century phenomenon. They're not ancient. They were invented at the turn of the 20th century to communicate impassioned sentiments that could no longer be expressed in what you might describe as the official idiom of the criminal law. They were designed to inflict a suffering that had long since been officially disavowed. In other words, the penal excess of these lynchings wasn't an accidental effect of a crowd getting carried away. It was at the very core of the event's penal purpose and political meaning. That's what it was all about. So let me step back from these lynchings and note some of the characteristics that they exhibit. First of all, they were enjoyed as good days out, as entertainment, both by the crowds who attended and also by the subsequent consumers of photographic images and newspaper reports. The modern media was drawn to them immediately. Professional photographers set up shop at the scene of these lynchings and did a brisk business selling photo souvenirs of the event. Newspaper reports occurred all over the country. Secondly, they gave a prominent role to the white victim of the alleged crime. Thank you. They gave a prominent role to the white victim of the alleged crime and to his or her kin and supporters. In other words, the offense involved a criminal act, but it really remained personal, a private wrong to be avenged, not a legal violation to be sanctioned. Thirdly, the object of punishment, Henry Smith, the other lynch victims, was described as an inhuman monster, not a disobedient subject or a political enemy. The lynch victim was outside of the law, not a lawbreaker. Fourthly, these atrocious interracial crimes, the rape by a black man of a white child, the killing of a black man of a police officer, the killing by a black man of a white employer, these atrocious interracial crimes provided good occasions for political mobilization. That's to say, they activated and energized local politics. They helped forge alliances between race radicals and lower white class males. They created ideological associations linking black males and violent crime. They legitimated racial violence by representing it as criminal punishment. And they empowered some groups vis-a-vis others within the white community. In other words, these were political opportunities, not just for whites against blacks, but for whites against other whites. They were occasions where the political ground shifted and some groups could gain advantage and power by grabbing this event. Fifthly, in these lynchings we do not see a strong state asserting its power, but rather we see a group of local people defying the state, defying a weak, distant, ineffective government. It's not a story of sovereignty affirmed, but rather of sovereignty contested. The force being displayed is not the state's law, but rather the mob rule, the crowd justice, the community's justice. If there's a sovereignty being imagined and being enacted here, it belongs to groups of local people, not to the state in the state capital or Washington, D.C. Sixth, the public torture lynching is a practical critique of official criminal justice. A practical critique of official criminal justice. By their actions, and in the subsequent statements of their apologists, the mobs made clear their demand for harsher treatments of these specific crimes and these specific criminals. Harsher treatments than the official system could deliver. The state's own criminal justice was deemed to be too lenient, too slow, too uncertain, and above all, altogether too respectful of the criminal and his so-called rights. Seventh, the event is not an official ceremony, but instead a popular carnival. It's a lynching bee, a Negro barbecue. It takes place not in the centres of national power, but instead in rural counties in the south, far from the seats of local government, of central government. Eighth, the lynchings were explicitly violent and self-consciously uncivilized. The mob insisted on punishments that were widely regarded at the time as being anachronistic and barbaric. The fact that they scandalized liberal elites and national opinion elsewhere, especially in the New York Times, that was a large part of their local appeal. Ninth, these events were openly and unashamedly racialized. The mobs utterly rejected the law's commitment to equality and emphatically affirmed local norms of caste superiority. And finally, again, these were open, public, communicative. They're what we would now describe as being media events. That's how they were designed. They invited crowds. They encouraged photographs. They generated postcards. They supplied graphic material for newspaper accounts and personal narratives. This is what they were for, what they were about, why they were imitated, why they were so popular, why the newspaper reports knew to get down there. They were announced in advance. They put images of righteous killing into circulation. And they exploited the drama and the entertainment value that criminal punishments possessed. So now, to return to today and to capital punishment and to the 21st century. Am I implying that capital punishment in modern America is, in fact, some kind of lynching? Not at all, just the opposite. Capital punishment today is not a modern lynching. To suggest that would be to offer another version of the vestigial theory, but more importantly, it would ignore the very specific forms that I took care to describe earlier. So it's not a modern lynching, but nor is it an instance of a sovereign state exercising its power. Neither the Foucauldian image nor the Garland image fit the scene. But if we think of today's capital punishment system in its relationship to both of these historical exemplars and the tension between them, I think we can see more clearly some of the relationships and conflicts that structure capital punishment today, and some of the conflicts which over time have given rise to its peculiar forms and specific functions. Let me describe what I mean. The conflicts and the power balances between national and local authorities, between representatives and their constituents, between social classes and racial groups, between North and South, between federal law and popular democracy, between personalistic power and bureaucratic authority, between rough justice and the rule of law. These are the tensions that have shaped the system over time and which continue to structure the system today. If we think about capital punishment, modern capital punishment, in its relationship to these two models, we notice, I think, that in virtually every respect, the formal aspect of today's state-controlled capital punishment system, the formal aspects are the inverse of those we see in the lynching.